I've been playing Throne and Liberty since launch. And when launch hit, I have had only one goal in this game. And that one goal has been to solo every single dungeon in the entire game. Now, Redemptive Barrier happens to be the best skill in the entire hacking game, because it makes you invincible for 6 seconds at the small cost of your entire mana bar. Now, this isn't really a big issue, considering that Thunder Blessing exists. Thunder Blessing letting you basically regenerate your entire mana bar at will. But because of the combination of these two skills, I technically have infinite hit points. And because of that, that allows me to solo every single dungeon ever. Now, I've been trying to get more damage because I soloed Tyrant's Isle, and it took me like 20 minutes, and I didn't want to make that a video, obviously, because 20 minutes is a damn long time. So the solution I came up with was to just wait, keep getting my damage up, keep getting my hit points up, so that I can solo Temple of Slaughter, because that one requires a ton of hit points, and just hope that our Lord and Savior Lord Hizen didn't do anything. He did something. He soloed the dungeon that I already soloed. One of the two. That being Death's Abyss. So now I'm going to explain how to solo every single dungeon before he can get to it, so that hopefully, not just me, but anyone else who sees this can solo it before he does. Because I'm kinda salty that I lost. The first thing I have to talk about when it comes to soloing every single dungeon is your gear traits. So, your traits are just gonna have to purely consist of max health, melee endurance, and ranged endurance. Because those things are what's gonna allow you to tank every single attack. And tanking every single attack is probably the most important thing you're gonna need to do, considering that Redemptive Barrier isn't always going to save you. Especially if you're not even playing staff. Cause, I'm gonna be honest, Greatsword works perfectly fine. And speaking of weapons, Spear. When Spear comes out, because obviously Spear isn't out yet, it's coming out in about a week and a half, grind the hell out of Spear. Because Spear, when it comes out, is going to be the best weapon to pair with Tome. And to solo a dungeon, Tome is pretty much required, considering that it's the only way to get reliable self-sustain. And self-sustain is really important when soloing, because if you take any sort of damage, you're gonna need to heal that damage. Because once you get to the boss, if you have no hit points left, you're gonna die. And campfires aren't gonna be enough to get you there. So that's why it rules out pure damage. So you need Tome to solo a dungeon. Now, in terms of secondary weapons that aren't Tome, the two most valid ones at this point are Greatsword and Staff. Greatsword, you can stun, but your damage is garbage. It's god awful. Sword barely does any damage at all. That's why that's not viable. Because if you went into a dungeon with Sword, you would simply not be able to do anything. You would never die, which would technically work, but it would take like an hour to kill anything. Staff is good because you have a range, which lets you strafe. Strafing is really important because it lets you dodge attacks that otherwise you wouldn't be able to do with a greatsword. Also, staff's damage is just better. Now, once again, spear, when it comes out, is probably going to be the best solo weapon. Spear, when it comes out, has stun. It has a stun. We've seen that in the trailer. It has a range. You can throw it, and it seems like it does pretty good damage, considering that it's meant to be paired with a greatsword, and greatswords don't do very good damage. I mean, also to be fair, greatswords pair well with swords, and sword and shield kind of does no damage, as I said earlier. So, while that may be a problem, I think that while greatsword is like the tanky secondary option, they're going for spear as like the more DPS secondary option, meant to be played with, say, sword and shield for tanks. Oh yeah, you should join our guild. We need more people. When this weapon comes out, I am going to, first of all, test it out to see if I'm right, which I will be, I'm always right. And I am probably going to max it out by just running rando dungeons I'm just gonna spam running rando dungeons. I might also do resistance contracts, specifically the Shattered Temple contracts, because if you didn't know, Shattered Temple contracts are actually the best way and quickest way to get your resistance contracts done, especially if you're a DPS like myself and you can just simply blow up a bunch of enemies in a row. Because Shattered Temple has this unique strategy you can use, in which you can go and find the mana recording device, pretty free, and then you can go for the Blessed Relic, because the Blessed Relic, or the Blessed Material, summons all the enemies around you, meaning you can just take the Blessed Relic and just blow up all of the enemies. And if you're tanky enough, you can just stand in the middle of all of the enemies that get pulled to the Blessed Material, and you can just, say, pop a fireball on them, and they'll all die. Because they have, like, no health at all. And if you just do that over and over again, that is the fastest way to get your resistance contracts done. If you're playing a weapon that has a bunch of AoE. Now, once I get my resistance contracts, the first thing I'm gonna do with Spear is I'm probably gonna go into Death's Abyss, because Death's Abyss is the easiest one out of the 50 dungeons, and that makes it the best one to try out solo builds in, because you won't be able to do it with any normal, like, run-of-the-mill solo builds. You're just gonna be able to do it with the ones that you can actually solo dungeons with, because the problem with that dungeon is mostly the Soul Arbiters. Because the Soul Arbiters have this thing where they go, "I'll wipe you all!" And then when they wipe you all, they do these weird, like, triple attack thing, which will kill you if you can't tank it or stun them. Now, there are exactly 2 ways to consistently tank that I've found using greatsword or staff. With greatsword, you can just stun them. But with staff, you can just pop a redemptive barrier when they say, "I'll wipe you all," and then you just lose all your mana and they can't kill you fast enough for that to come back. Now, if you fully upgraded redemptive barrier, then you will have enough cooldown where when he does it again, you will have redemptive barrier again and you can just keep blocking it. So you can actually use both of those strategies to tank the "I will wipe you all." The second thing that you always have to worry about, besides weird insta-kill stuff, specifically on greatsword, is you have to worry about the fact that you take forever to kill something. Because your damage with any solo build is going to be much worse than on any DPS build because you have to use Tome. And Tome's damage is kind of really bad. It might honestly be worse than Sword. But because you're running Tome, you're always going to need to be watching out for your health, because you're not just going to instantly kill everything like you would do with, say, crossbow daggers, or later on crossbow spear maybe. Damage is a problem. It's a pretty big one. But your main problem is not going to be damage. It is going to be the insta-kills. Because the insta-kills are your main issue. Because obviously most of the bosses require group mechanics and they'll insta-kill you if you don't do them. That brings me back to that greatsword and staff greatsword and staff are not actually the 2 weapons that are currently viable. Those 2 weapons are actually staff and sword paired with Tome. Because with sword, while you may take forever to kill anything, you will always survive the insta-kill attacks, even in the level 50 dungeons. Or at least I think you will. I haven't tested that. But with staff being the overall best of the 3 weapons that I've mentioned, once again, redemptive barrier allows you to tank every single insta-kill attack in the game. The only one that's a problem is the triple fireball from Temple of Slaughter. And I've been working on that, right? With redemptive barrier, you're able to tank 2 out of the 3. Yeah, you're able to tank 2 out of the 3 fireballs. And then you'll get hit by the 3rd one and still be stunned for a while. So I discovered that if you have 16,000 hit points or more, you are able to tank it safely and he won't kill you afterwards. Now, with 14,000 hit points, you can technically, with over 14,000, you can technically tank it, but he'll hit you with the attack afterwards and you will probably die. That's the problem I encountered when I was trying to do the dungeon. But if you find a way to tank that, then you're good. You can solo that dungeon. And now that I've shared all of the information that I've come across so far when it comes to soloing dungeons, Now that I've shared my knowledge and imparted it onto you, I hope that you will be able to beat Lord Hizen for me, because I know that I'm probably not going to be able to do it, and he's going to get to it first, because obviously he's Lord Hizen and he's really damn good at soloing. That's what he does. So I hope that with this information, you are able to go into a dungeon and just solo it. If you get a bad group, just solo it. Sure, it might take like 10 minutes to kill a guy. Who cares? You win. Redemptive Barrier is the best skill in the game. And all it takes is going into skill specialization, heading over to staff, and going over to this thing right here. Costs 7 points. Best skill in the game. If you're running solo, if you're running staff specifically, you need to take Redemptive Barrier, or else you will you will die. Icebound Tomb is also a really good one to take. I haven't needed it yet, because I can just survive all of the insta-kills. That's about it.